Hello and welcome to Take Time. I'm your host Patrick Marlett, and today we're going to take time talking topics Bezel World 2019 edition. So there's this little event that happens yearly called Bezel World, and I'm always asked if I'm going to be there. The answer is not forever no, but not in the immediate future. I really don't plan on attending. Unless a company wanted to have me film something for them and will pay for my accommodations and flight, I doubt I will be attending Bezel World anytime soon. Regardless, people always ask me about the recent releases, what were my thoughts about them, if I have predictions. I usually don't. I like seeing what these people come out with when they come out with them. So my expectations are never too high, and as a matter of fact, as a vintage collector, most of what I want has already been made. So it's interesting to see what was released this Bezel World, because most of the watches I really liked are actually throwbacks. As a matter of fact, all of them were, and I'm only going to speak on 3 watches in particular today, my top 3 picks from this recent Bezel World. And of course, let me know what your favorite releases were down in the comments section below. Were there any surprises for you? Any major upsets? Let me know what those were down below. I understand a lot of folks weren't all too impressed with this Bezel World. However, there were a few really cool releases. Now, I'm not going to list these in any sort of numerical order. However, I will discuss them in this order. This isn't to say that this first model I bring up is my favorite. It's in no particular order. The watch that got me the most hyped, though, the most excited, a piece I'd really love to check out in person, is the Tudor P01. Now, I know what you're thinking. It has become the most recent meme for watch collectors. I know a lot of folks were let down by this release. They were expecting something else from the brand. However, I think the P01 is an awesome addition to their collection. However, there are a few issues, in my opinion, with how it was ultimately executed from its original design. And that's the thing. A lot of folks thought this was some new design, some completely off-the-wall design from the brand, but it's actually modeled after a prototype that they made back in the 60s. The Commander was part of an R&D program to produce a watch that would alleviate the issue of a bezel moving by accident when someone was in the field. So they created this locking clasp mechanism that fit neatly between the lugs and snapped down on your bidirectional bezel so that it wouldn't move. This has been done numerous times through numerous different devices from other brands. The 2 that come up predominantly for me are the Squale Tiger and the Omega Ploprof, but this was Tudor's take on it. However, it never came to fruition, and now we finally have it. So why aren't more people excited? Well, for some reason, and I'm not sure why, I know it's mostly to do with Tudor, but folks were expecting a Submariner reissue, the 79,000 series reissue. Tudor's had numerous versions of the Submariner. The one that was hinted at had triangle markers at the 3, 6, and or 9 position. And they'd released imagery that gave folks the impression that they were going to release another Submariner. So, of course, when one wasn't released, folks got upset. And I'd like to mention that the original model of the P01 actually says Submariner on the dial, so they kind of technically delivered. But it's not the Submariner people wanted. Clearly. Now, here's my thing. I don't understand why that rumor started outside of Tudor's own influence, but why do folks want another Submariner from Tudor? I mean, isn't that why Rolex is there? Clearly, the brand is trying to distinguish themselves from their mother company with the new Black Bay series and obviously their Heritage Chrono, the Pelagos. They have their own lineup of professional timepieces. So why would they want to start producing the same product they used to, and one that Rolex obviously does? I don't personally understand that. I feel like the Black Bay is the answer to the Submariner. If you wanted a more affordable version of a Submariner, that's why people would turn to Tudor. And it has an aesthetic, at least with its handset, that distinguishes it from its mother company. So I'm a little confused as to why folks would even want a Tudor Submariner. Let me know in the comment section down below if you want one. I see them on the used market for $4,000 or less, depending on the model you want. So it's not like you couldn't just buy one of those instead, unless you really have to have it brand new. There are plenty well-kept used Tudor Submariners. So anyways, if you were one of those few that was hoping for a Tudor sub, let me know why in the comment section down below. And you're obviously upset about it if you were expecting it, but why would you want one, and would you still want one? Anyways, back to the P01 and why it is one of my favorite releases from the brand. I'm honestly a little Black Bay fatigued with what they've been releasing, and the P01 is still a Black Bay. It's different from the rest of their lineup. However, unlike their mantra would suggest, born to dare, they didn't dare quite enough in my opinion. They didn't push the envelope as far as they could with this design, and how I'm going to get some of my complaints out of the way first. Obviously, I like to start with the bad and move on to the good here. So why don't we talk about some of the things that I have issue with in concerns to the P01. One of the design changes that I dislike from the original P01 concept to the model we ultimately have today is with the cut of the lugs. You'll notice from the imagery here that the lugs cut straight across to meet those clamps on either or end. And obviously only one of those clamps is functional for the watch, but to me it provided a better look for the design and honestly a more original take on what a Submariner or what a Black Bay in this instance could be. Instead, the P01 has these concentric cuts to the lugs that match the lines of the case, and it honestly doesn't honor the original integrity of the case design that was featured in that Commando program, this prototype that unfortunately we don't have. Now that's just one design change I really dislike with the P01. There's actually two more I'm going to mention here that are deterring me from really hopping aboard the Black Bay Express. The other one is with the bezel, and Tudor's site is, let's put it gently, it's complete garbage. If you can get any information off of it, their Black Bay reference here when they're referring to the specs of the watch, and it's horribly lacking in certain details, which we'll talk about in just a second. But the bezel here is a 60-click bidirectional bezel. Obviously, it has 12-hour gradation, so you can use it as a secondary time zone. However, you'll notice that it's all blacked out. I can't find on their site anything stating that it's loomed. It's black loom. I don't think a thing exists, but maybe it does. But you'll notice that the original concept had a 12-hour pip that was loomed. That's actually very functional. That's very useful for someone who's trying to use this underwater, locking the mechanism and using it to time his dive or his decompression or whatever you divers do. You wouldn't be using this watch anyways. But you'll notice the watch features a black triangle. I don't know if that's loomed or not. I don't think it is, but that seems like a big miss on my part. I mean, you tell me, this whole design is built for its functionality. I mean, that's the whole gimmick of the locking clamp. So if that's missing loom, I think we're missing the general idea of this watch, Tudor. Anyways, I could be wrong. Let me know if black loom is such a thing. I'm not a loom junkie. You would clearly know that if you watch the show, but I could care less. But in this instance, it's a little odd that it's missing from the bezel of what is presumably a dive watch, a field watch, a glorified field watch. It's just odd to me. And lastly, the thing that really bugs me the most about the P01, and I understand Tudor is trying to separate itself from Rolex in its total design, although they still use that Rolex dial on entirely too many of their watches. I'd really prefer it, for multiple reasons, to have the snowflake dial, as some would call it, with the square hour pips instead. I think it lines up better with their snowflake handset. But instead, they've got 1 foot out the door and 1 foot in the door with the snowflake hands and a sub dial. And it just really doesn't look good, in my opinion. That marriage, it doesn't work very well. I would have preferred that it kept the Mercedes hands of the original design, not only to honor the fidelity of that original design, which they've already ruined, but to marry better with at least the dial, so it looked a little bit more appealing to your potential consumers. And that's just my take on it. I mean, I don't think the snowflake hands look good with that dial, even on the Black Bay 58. Hate me. I don't think it looks great with that dial combination. And I know there are people that disagree with me strongly. I know there are people that agree with me strongly. Let me know any of those strong opinions in the comments section down below. This whole channel is about the conversation. So feel free to let me know if you like how they've included the snowflake hands on this essentially niche tool watch. Now, those are all the things I dislike about this piece in regards to its overall design. I wouldn't be bringing it up unless I actually liked it in some regard. However, I do want to bring up a few neutral notes on this piece. From every blogger reviewer I've seen posting imagery about this watch, it does not seem like a small watch. All I know is that it's 42 millimeters in width, in diameter. Here's what Tudor says. Case, 42 millimeter steel case with satin finish. Yeah, that's all I really need to know about this piece. 42 millimeters, that's my favorite size. No, Tudor, any brand, and they're not the only group that's criminal for doing this, but the most important thing about a watch is how it might potentially wear on your wrist if you don't have a boutique nearby, if you don't have a dealer that sells Tudors and you can't try one on. Well, if you're going to get one of these offline, there's no great way of knowing how it's going to size up on your wrist because they don't provide you the dimensions on their own site. What? That's absurd. And they're not the only brand to do that, but 42 millimeters, you could give me just a little bit more detail than that. Now, there's some groups that mention the lug width being 20 millimeters. I haven't gone the lug to lug dimensions specifically. I understand the watch is 14 millimeters thick. Potentially? I'm confused. I think more people need to bring their calipers with them when they go to these events so that they can give specifics like this because they're kind of important. Am I wrong? Especially at $4,000. Anyways, what I do like about the design is that it's awesome and it's not another Submariner and it's not just another Black Bay. They're doing something off the wall. So even if only a little, they are daring. They are daring. And even though the lug language is toned down so that it matches the rest of their collection, I do admire that they're going for something unique and off the wall and unexpected from their consumers. And even if people don't appreciate that, I see this doing at least somewhat well within the community of folks that want a watch that functions beyond the ordinary. I think more and more folks are going to want to play with that clamping mechanism than are willing to admit. And that alone gets me excited about the piece. A different way to interact with my watch. It makes the experience fun. Let's not kid ourselves. I mean, I think that's why people go to meetup groups and want to see new things or go to the store to try on watches. You want to find that experience that is pleasing. Anyways, that's just my take on the P01. Obviously, let me know your thoughts on the P01 down below. Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Do you want to try one out? Do you want to be sent one in for review like I do? It would be really great to give you guys the dimensions of this watch. If you know the dimensions, let me know in the comment section down below, but I'd love to hear your overall thoughts on this new design or reissued design. The next watch that caught my attention, and this wouldn't be take time unless I brought up this brand at least once, is the latest Seiko reissue. What's more expensive than a Tudor P01? Well, apparently this limited edition Seiko diver. And I am of course talking about the Seiko SLA033. This is a reissue of their famous 6105, 8110, or 8119, depending on which reference you own, of the Seiko second generation diver. This is the one that was featured in Apocalypse Now. We would not know about this watch unless it was that film. Or at least everyone that writes an article about this watch mentions that film. The funny thing is, I never finished that movie. And I never saw the watch in that movie. So if it shows up in the first 5 minutes, well, then I guess I hung on that long. I don't know why I could never get into Apocalypse Now, but everyone brings up that movie. Is that why you know about this watch? Let me know in the comment section down below. Seiko's second generation of diver is honestly my favorite, both of them. If you don't know, there's the 8000 series diver as well as the 8110s. Now, I personally prefer the 6105 8000 or 8009. I owned an 8000 before. It was, I don't know why I sold that watch, honestly. It was one of my favorite watches. I'd love to buy another one. We'll get back into why I'm not buying another one right now. However, the 6105 8000 series was a cushion case diver, and then you have obviously the 8110 or the Willards, which is much wider, which influenced the Seiko Turtles, which was part of their third generation of diver. There was another model that released alongside the Turtles, the 6309s and the 6306s. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. These second gen divers are amongst the most collected and most gorgeous designs they've ever made for a dive watch. I think the 62 Moss, a little overrated. Honestly, there are a lot of watches from that era that look exactly like that watch. You really don't need to buy a 62 Moss to get that look unless you're just a Seiko collector like myself. Then maybe you want one for some strong reason. But the second generation divers from Seiko were definitely unique and worthwhile for collectors. However, recently, prices have only been going up on those second-gen divers. 6105 8000s, man, there was a time where they would never go above $800. And maybe you can still find them for around that much, but they're going into that $1,000 category. I mean, I bought mine for $600 to give you an idea, and this was a little over a year ago. I bought a 6105 8000 a little over a year ago for right around $600. You can't do that anymore. I'll have to check the prices, but I'm pretty sure you couldn't find one for that much. And it's even worse for folks that want to get the 8110s. Those have been increasing even more so in value. I really don't know why. Folks just like the chunky design of that case, but that's the one people gravitate towards from Seiko's second generation of divers. So of course we would make a reissue of that diver, but unlike the SLA017 or the 2018 release of the SLA025, there are no budget-friendly versions of this watch. There is the limited edition range of the SLA033s and nothing else. And just so you know, in case you don't know what I'm talking about, I believe the reference numbers, at least stateside, are SBDC051, and that's the black version of what was essentially the budget 62 MOS, and then there's the 061, which is the budget version of that early Marine Master case of that model. So there were budget-friendly versions for those watches. And I say budget-friendly, they're right under $800, which is doable for a lot of us collectors. So if you want to own one of these 2,500 made SLA033s, you're going to have to fork up, I think the suggested MSRP is a little over $4,000. Yeah. Now, I don't personally have that kind of budget to fling around, so I don't think I'm ever going to own one of these reissues. And getting a vintage model is becoming increasingly difficult. And if you are the type of person that just doesn't want to shop vintage, well, then there really isn't a great way for you to get this affordably. So I'm going to start by saying that is a bad note. That is awful. Like, they're cutting out a huge segment of their market. I feel like they should know who their demographic is at this point. Folks that want to spend $500 or less on a quality dive watch. And they're just missing that mark horribly here. And it's a little sad because, maybe they're going to release it later. Hopefully we will get a standard model for this reissue, but it doesn't look like it. And depending on when you watch this, maybe they will have it out. That would be great. I think that needs to happen. We can have a silver dial, we can have a blue dial, and then the same ubiquitous handset of every other Prospex diver, and the same movement used in all of those other reissues, but at least we get an affordable version of said watch, and then we can just switch the handset out ourselves, and perhaps the dial. But right now, we don't even have that option. The next bad note I want to mention about this watch is the price. It's completely unjustified. There are bloggers and reviewers talking this up and saying how it's warranted. It's not. No matter how you look at it, no matter how you discuss this watch, there's no reason this should be over $4,000. There's no reason, other than the fact that it's limited and that they know they can sell it to someone for that much money. It's really unfair to their market because you can buy a Marine Master with an 8L35 and probably the same level of detailing as this watch, although I've heard that this piece has Zaratsu levels of finishing. It's really not worth that much more, not $1,000 more. Because you can get their current Marine Master models, not the Tuna, but their Marine Master, the SBDX, for less than $3,000. Why should you pay over $1,000 more for this? The Marine Master 300's pricing is perfect for it. I think under $3,000 is fair for that watch, particularly the newer models with the ceramic insert and the sapphire crystal. That's a change that lots of folks have wanted. This watch, however, it doesn't even come with a bracelet. It comes with a waffle strap. It's not worth it. If you want the stoplight seconds hand of a 6105, just buy a 6105. Trust me, you will make out much better with that watch than this one. Give it to a competent repairman, get it water tested, wear that thing to the beach, take that thing out. You're still going to be able to use it and wear it perfectly. Trust me. I own watches from the 70s that I wear in the water. I accidentally took this in the shower with me recently. I thought I was wearing my Manta, and I wore this in the shower. Totally fine. 70 meters of water resistance, still. It's funny because I joked about how my repairman was telling me that he had this water tested and that it's better than 70 meters of water resistance. Apparently it's shower safe. So guys, there's no reason you shouldn't buy the vintage one. If you were considering this model or you feel like you're going to miss out if you don't get it, well, there's a couple thousand used ones that you can get for far less. That's the better bargain in my opinion. Just research what you should be getting in case you're worried about getting a Franken model. If it looks too good to be true, though, in most instances when it comes to vintage, it's a fake. Anyways, other than that, so far as bad notes are concerned, the literature on the dial, I like how it used to say water number 150 meters resist or proof on some dials. It doesn't say that anymore. I think it just says divers 200. It's more in line with what they do currently, but I don't know. That was part of the charm of those vintage pieces. It would be cool if you just followed that aesthetic, but you know, we're missing that too. Anyways, good notes on this piece. If you can afford one, it's awesome. You should buy one. You should definitely own one. However, I don't see too many positives about this, particularly if this is the trend Seiko's going. I would like to see, if there are limited ranges, something to feed the rest of your masses. You have folks that love this design and have wanted it to be reissued in a standard non-limited model. You should try to appease them because they're the folks keeping you afloat, whether you know it or not. The folks buying your watches, I'm a sucker for your watches. Try to give me a model that I can actually afford too. I think they did the right thing with the previous ones. Hopefully they come out with a budget-friendly model for everyone else. But so far as I'm concerned, at over $4,000, I'm not going to be able to afford this anytime soon. I really love the design, obviously. That's why I purchased that earlier $8,000. However, this is something I don't think I'm going to be able to get into, but it's cool to see them do it again. You know, this sort of recraft of that original design. Also, I have friends that have complained about this movement. Let me know if you own an 8L movement and whether you've had issues with it. You know, it's so far as I understand, a fairly problematic movement for the brand. I'm surprised they are continuing to use it in their model ranges, particularly these limited editions. Let me know if you own a watch with an 8L and how has it performed for you. I'm curious, is it worth over $4,000 for that movement in this case? Let me know your thoughts. But also, if you're going to pick one of these up, or you are already on a pre-order, I'm not sure when I'm airing this, but yeah, let me know if this is a watch you're interested in. And last and certainly not least, in my opinion, one of the coolest releases, aside from Monta's Atlas in my book, one of the coolest releases at Basel World is the Zodiac Aerospace Gmt. Have you guys seen this? Apparently, one of the colorways is sold out, but this watch is this awesome reissue of a design they've had in their catalog for some time that's been modernized for the modern gentleman. So what Fossil's providing here is a limited edition range, I believe 182 each in each colorway of the Aerospace Gmt. Now, only one of these designs really harkens back to its original, which we'll talk about in just a second. The other colorway is more akin to, I believe, one of their Zodiac Sea Wolves. It's not necessarily in the design catalog for the Aerospace, however, it looks good, so do it. Edit 2893s at the helm of either one of these models, and they fall just shy of $1,700. Now, I know what you're thinking. You can find Edit 2893s in far more affordable watches. However, what Zodiac put out is so handsome, and there's a reason why both models are sold out at this point, because the design is so gorgeous. It's amazing bracelet, let alone the bracelet, the case head, the colorways for these watches were absolutely stunning. I particularly like the baby blue orange bezel configuration. That one is absolutely stunning. It's a piece I'd love to take in person. However, at under 400 of these models in total, it seems unlikely that we'll get any of these in hand myself, or if you're watching this and we're curious, you, sadly, unless you want to buy it secondhand. So while Zodiac has the opposite problem of Seiko in this instance, instead of offering this watch at an absurdly high price, they actually offered it at a somewhat reasonable price for this particular watch and movement. I think it's actually fairly accurate to what you should be paying for this watch. The availability, however, instead of 2,500 pieces of these models, either one, you have less than 200. That's crazy. So yeah, as far as bad notes are concerned, they don't exist anymore. You know, I don't know if Zodiac plans on reintroducing these in a non-limited, I don't know if this first run was just going to have an inscription on the case back that tells you your number in the lineup of sales, or if there's going to be a standard model of this. I can't quite say yet. However, it's a really cool watch, so I can forgive that bad note. It just sucks if you wanted to get one. Everything's limited these days. What in the world? Why are all these watches being limitized? What is that? That's really the only bad thing I can say about this watch. Otherwise, everything else about this piece is stellar. It has the same water resistance as the other two watches I discussed, the P01 and the 6105 reissue, the SLA033, at 200 meters of water resistance. You also have a case that comes with a bracelet at under $2,000. That's awesome. The design of the case is absolutely stunning and revamped from its original 35mm scale to a 40mm scale, which I think for a lot of us is far more welcomed. I think 35 for the modern gent might seem a little too small. I think 40 is right at home for a lot of us. So they did so much right with this design. And Zodiac has just been pushing out all of these beautiful designs since recently. Has their leadership changed? I don't follow this brand enough to know. Let me know if you know in the comment section down below. But damn, they're doing a fantastic job with these new designs, and this is no exception. This Aerospace GMT is absolutely stellar. And the fact that it's really the highlight for me from this recent Baselworld is saying something. Yeah, wow, the Aerospace GMT, stunning. The Golf model, I'm pretty sure that's the one that sold out first from what I read. It's absolutely gorgeous. Blue and orange, who'd have thunk that would be the perfect marriage? But you could literally, Zodiac, if you're listening, you could literally produce this same watch, different movement. You don't need to give me a 24-hour hand. Just give me a 12-hour bezel and that same design. I think you would make a lot of people happy. Obviously, you were trying to, cater to the original Aerospace GMT aesthetic, but if you're going to do a non-limited range, just give me this same watch with a 12-hour bezel instead and a different, maybe thinner movement. That would be awesome. Those are the 3 watches I found most interesting from Baselworld 2019. The 3 booths I wish I could have visited. Now, if you visited Baselworld, let me know which were your favorite booths, which were your favorite watches, obviously. If you didn't have an opportunity to visit, still let me know what were your favorite new releases. I'd love to find out. Feel free to take time talking the topics in the comment section down below. Did the P01 upset you, or do you like the unexpected? I mean, they are born to dare, aren't they? How about the 6105 reissue with the SLA033? Are you ready to throw all of your money at that one watch this year? Forget about your kid's college. Forget about your potential college. Who knows? You don't need it. You have a beautiful Seiko on your wrist. That's all we really need, right? And what about that Aerospace GMT, the most stunning design from Baselworld 2019, in my humble opinion? Outside of what Monta produced, I have to say I really do like the Atlas they've just started making. It's stunning. I'd love to get one of those. Also, the freaking gilt dial, no date, Ocean King. Anyways, thank you for joining me on another Take Time Talking Topics segment. I'm your host, Patrick Marlett, and thank you for the time.